Hi, I'm back again with another excerpt from Finding Yoyu. And this week we're not going to be talking about big fish, Bigfoot, or fairies. We might talk about a spider. But actually, in this excerpt, I'm going to be talking more about myself and where I was at in my career at the point in time when my husband's parents started to need help from us. To kind of put that into perspective. And it's a little bit longer today, so I hope you'll stay until the end. Here we go. During those weeks in Hiroshima, I spent a lot of time thinking about my future. Even though I was extra busy with household chores, being in a different environment gave me space to explore how I felt, especially about my business. So much had changed in the previous 2 years, and I was still trying to find my footing. A few days after I arrived in Hiroshima, I got an email from one of my mentors about a month-long mastermind full of women like me who were trying to grow their businesses. I couldn't believe my luck. The mastermind coincided perfectly with my stay in Hiroshima. I felt sure the universe had set this all up just for me and immediately joined. The mastermind included daily journaling exercises that I did every night before bed. There was a lot of back and forth sharing in the Facebook group, too. One of the optional but highly recommended activities was to find out what your totem animal was. I grew up with astrology, numerology, and psychic readings, but had never thought about totem animals. I didn't know it was allowed, as if only people from certain cultures could have one. I really wanted to get a reading and then, at first, hesitated because my business wasn't bringing in a lot of money anymore. I felt a little ashamed. How could I spend money on something so frivolous? Though I was alone in the room, I held my breath while I quietly slipped my credit card out and ordered a reading anyway. Several days later, on August 1st, I got an email back with my reading. I was surprised and not surprised at the same time. My totem was spider. The woman who did the reading wrote, "Thank you for your patience. The last couple of days have been so hectic that my intuition was feeling a little scattered. I wanted to wait until I was able to form a strong, energetic bridge between you, a bridge to you before attempting to feel your animal nature. I've been able to connect with you on that level this morning, and your intuition points you very accurately toward one of your strongest animal guides, the spider. I have a spider in my full totemic makeup as well. They can feel somewhat difficult for some people to form connections with, but I have the sense that you and this animal will have no trouble forming resonance." Holy Spirit guides. I was thrilled, overwhelmed, and in awe. I had no idea that spiders were animal totems. When I told Akira, he wondered if the woman who did the reading had cheated somehow. Perhaps she had talked to one of my online friends and heard about my encounter with Spider. I don't see how she could have, and didn't care if she did. I was happy to embrace Spider again. Spider made my stay in Hiroshima personal. I wasn't sure what having Spider as a totem would mean in the long run. However, having had such a close encounter with her in person and then receiving the totem while I was still in Hiroshima made it clear to me that my stay there was about more than being a supportive daughter-in-law. By the end of my stay in mid-August, Akira's mother was doing really well. My sister was getting married, and I flew back to the U.S. to help get ready for the wedding. Akira's classes were finished for the summer, so he stayed with his father until Okasan was finally released from the hospital. By the end of the month, Akira's brother and wife had arrived in Hiroshima to take over, so Akira could join me in the U.S. for the wedding. We had a wonderful visit with my family in the U.S., and once back home in Tokyo, we dove into our work. The second semester was starting for Akira, and I was totally absorbed with a new business idea. My stay in Hiroshima seemed like the distant past. In retrospect, I know this is where we made a mistake. Akira's mother needed us to take care of Otosan while she was in the hospital, and we did. But she also needed us to take care of him, both of them really, even after she was released. Looking back, I can't understand why we thought they would be okay on their own. Of course, I knew things were not 100% and that we would have to be much more involved with their lives again soon. However, it still seemed far off. Perhaps it was wishful thinking or denial. I was so excited about my work that I didn't want to think about what they really needed. Over the summer, While I stayed in Hiroshima, my business took off in a new direction, and I had so much momentum. I finally felt like I knew what I was supposed to be doing, and I had a roadmap to do it. It felt like the last 18 to 24 months of transition were over, and my business was finally making sense again. I had just come through a significant downsizing of our company. Akira and I started our business in 2002 to help support Japanese students who wanted to study abroad in the U.S. He had left a 25-plus-year career in university administration to do it, and we put everything into making the venture work. He handled most of the study abroad advising while I ran a small school to help students brush up on their English. We had over 100 students and one full-time teacher and several part-time teachers and staff coming through the 500-square-foot school. It was tight, but we made it work. Then, Akira left the company, and I floundered. Akira had been offered a teaching position in a new department opening up at a prestigious private university in Tokyo. In the Japanese higher education arena, it's rare for someone like Akira, who worked in administration, to be able to switch over to a faculty position. One thing Akira had going for him was that he had already left his administrative position and was now working in the private sector running our company. When the offer came, it was a career move he couldn't resist. When Akira took on his new full-time teaching position, he had to step down as the CEO of our company. I was happy for him and at the same time completely overwhelmed. I read books on leadership and marketing, I hired a coach, started holding regular staff meetings, streamlined our student onboarding processes, and even landed a major contract. On the outside, it looked like things were going great for the company. But I also made a lot of mistakes and was overspending, and I was also getting sick. Over and over again. I remember the moment I realized our business wasn't working. I was in a meeting with one of our teachers, and though Akira was no longer the CEO, he was there too as a co-owner of the company. We were exploring the idea of opening a second branch of our English school. Looking at the numbers, we all three realized that the model we had created would not be financially viable. It would only work if the branch manager taught full-time in addition to their administrative responsibilities. As an owner, I had been working around the clock like that for several years. With the current model, we could never compensate anyone enough to work like that. I had a sick feeling in my stomach. Our meeting ended and we never talked about opening a second branch again. About 6 months later, that teacher put in his notice and left our company. I knew that I was going to have to make some significant changes. I needed to raise our prices and reduce our spending. Whenever I tried to think about it, though, I felt like I was spinning in circles. I had too much on my plate. On top of it all, I was still recovering from hip replacement surgery, and all I could do was maintain the status quo. That year, I got every cold going around and could never get completely well. When I finally got quiet enough one day, staying home from yet another cold, I realized I didn't want to do it anymore. I decided to close the school. Of all the bold decisions I've made over the years, closing the school was one of the biggest. I was so relieved and ashamed at the same time. I was relieved to let go of the position and ashamed because I felt like I had been conning my students and their parents. I couldn't provide the solution I had promised anymore. As much as I adored my students and the act of teaching, I had a dark secret. Being an English teacher was something I had never wanted to be. Like so many, when I first started the school, I felt like an amateur or an imposter, but I got over those feelings with experience. What I couldn't ignore, and the deciding factor for me to close the school, was that I realized I was biding my time. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did know that I no longer wanted to be an English teacher. After closing the school, I kept the company going by focusing on study abroad. Thanks to Akira, we already had materials and a system in place to work with students one-on-one. Even better, there was still a huge market for families who wanted to pay for someone to assist them with the application and preparation process. My business was starting to turn around. Though we no longer received monthly income from the 100-plus English students, I had drastically reduced our expenses by letting go of all the part-time teachers and staff and moving my office home. I was doing everything virtually, including all the study abroad advising sessions. I had also been learning web design and development so that I could create an online course for the students preparing to study abroad. Then, while I was in Hiroshima staying with Otosan, I was contacted by a university in the US that wanted to recruit more Japanese students. They wondered if I could create a mini version of their website in Japanese. I almost said no. I wasn't a web designer after all. The more I thought about it, the more excited I got. I loved working on our website and had built a few others on the side because it was fun. While I was in Hiroshima, I had extra time, so I decided to go for it, and everything shifted. From then on, I started to think about how I could serve the universities instead of the students. It was a 180-degree shift. It would be for the same purpose, to help students study abroad, but my client would be an institution, not an individual. The months following my stay in Hiroshima, I was on fire. I was headed to California for a workshop, and I had arranged to visit 2 colleges in the U.S. that were thinking about hiring me. Both had already assured me that the visits were simply a formality. From our years working with international education, Akira and I had hundreds of other contacts at colleges throughout the U.S. With a little marketing, it wouldn't be long before more institutions signed up. The day before I left on this trip, I had an early morning call with my new business coach, Samantha. She had led the mastermind I joined while I was in Hiroshima and was also the one who recommended I get a totem reading. I invested in coaching because I could speak freely with Samantha about both business and spiritual matters. My company was bound to change even more, and I wanted to set myself up for success. Right after our call, I dashed out to an appointment with Greta from Bridge Between the Worlds. She was revisiting Japan and offering one-on-one transformational energy healing sessions. With my trip to the States, I didn't think I would be able to squeeze in a session with her, but I did it anyway. It had been 2 years since I had last seen her, and I wanted to let her know about how much my life had indeed transformed. Greta had an incredible gift for tuning into spirit guides and verbalizing what she was being shown. This time, she said they showed her that I was called a magic weaver. She could see what looked like the inside of a computer. Whatever I did would help energy or magic fly through the circuits in a very happy way, as if the energy was slipping and sliding down a water slide, hollering, "Yippee!" I loved it. Greta also said the guides were showing her how there could be, or already exists, a whole field of study or energetic training for people who were rising stars. I wasn't sure if the guides were suggesting something I should study, or if they were somehow referring to something I already did, or perhaps provided for others in the future. I couldn't see how it could be about me and guessed that it was more likely about a potential mentor. Either way, I was thrilled with the session. Between the coaching with Samantha and the healing with Greta, I was bursting with energy. I had a fabulous business trip to the U.S. and signed contracts with both colleges. I was sure that the whole 2-year process of closing the English school and finding a new way of being in business was over. I had turned a corner. My mind was full of how to grow my business and not of how to care for Okasan or Otosan. That's all for today. Thank you for listening. And next week we'll be back to talking about how I transition into then caring for Otosan, even though my business was booming or attempting to boom. Thanks so much. Bye for now.